All right, I'd like to start off today by talking about time management. Time management is a very important subject. We all have the same amount of hours in each of our days, no matter whether we're rich or poor. So it's one resource that is pretty much universal across the board. The big difference is how we decide to use our time and what we do with our time. So, in hopes of giving you a good start to your school year, I want to talk about time management and how you can use your time effectively in order to get the things done that you need to get done. That would be the goal of today's discussion. So, all right, let's go ahead and go on. How much would you pay for more time? If you think about some of the following scenarios, you can see that time is pretty precious, despite the fact that it's universal. At some point, it runs out for people. A man who's diagnosed with a terminal illness and given just months to live, or a student who forgets to finish his or her term paper before the deadline, which I unfortunately experienced during college. Um, Thank goodness I had a uh, very nice professor who allowed me to go back and make it up for only a sliver of the points lost, so that was good. A stockbroker who maybe fails to move on a multi-million-dollar investment in proper time, or and maybe on a less serious note, you discover your favorite store had a 50% off sale that just ended yesterday. Benjamin Franklin perhaps put it best when he said, "Remember that time is money." And if time is money, ultimately, each of us has our price that our time is worth. So it's important to kind of consider that as we go about making decisions of what we're going to do and how we're going to do things in our life. Time is like money, just like Benjamin Franklin says. As you budget, as you plan, and as you make goals with finances, you've got to budget and plan and set goals with your time if you want to make the most out of it. There's a little saying that talks about your day being a bank account, and every morning it dumps, I believe it's like 86,400 seconds. I believe that's how many seconds are in a day into it. And at the end of the day, if you've wasted that time, the money goes out the door. So if we think of it like that, it's important that we budget and use our time wisely. And I think if we're honest with ourselves, the question down here at the bottom about who feels like we're efficient at managing our time budget, there's probably none of us that feel like we're maximally efficient. We may be okay and better in some cases than others, but certainly we're probably not reaching our full potential as far as management of time. What I'd like to start you off and have you do now is I want you to determine your time budget. And you can do this in your notebook. This will be part of the things that you'll get graded on in your notebook. But go ahead and calculate these numbers. So calculate the number of hours you sleep each night. Calculate the number of hours you spend grooming or getting ready each day. Calculate the number of hours for meals, snacks, etc. a day. Include your preparation in there. Count your travel time for both weekdays and weekends. Count the regularly scheduled functions that you have each week, whether it's clubs, church, teams, stuff like that. Count in then the number of hours per day that you spend on chores or errands, and then the number of hours that you maybe work per week if you have a job. Then calculate the number of hours you are in class per week, which is roughly 6 hours a day, and if you want to count being at school in total, it's a little bit more. And then calculate the number of average hours per week you spend socializing, dating, being honest, and you can count your social media time in there. If you add up all those totals, and then you can subtract that number from 168, that's going to give you the amount of remaining time that you have to kind of study in the week. A lot of people say, "Oh, I didn't have time to be successful." Well, it's doubtful that you're using all 168 hours of your week. But that having been said, there's ways that we can set ourselves up for success more than others. Excuse me. Okay. So your time is where your treasure is. Often you might catch yourself feeling that you're not, having enough time to get things done in your life. And in honesty, yes, you're not going to have the ability to do every single thing that you want. However, if something's a priority and we're committed to it, we're going to make time for it. Often you'll hear people say, "Oh, I didn't get to that." Well, the reality is it wasn't important enough to get to for that person, and that's their judgment. Doesn't make them a bad person or a good person, but in the end, they're making a decision that the value of it is not above that of the other things that they spent their time doing. So we've got to be smart and decide, okay, where is the best place to spend our time? I've got some time management techniques and tips that I want to share with you now that should hopefully help you in managing your time. The next slides we're going to go talk about the following tips. Beginning with your goals, writing down a plan, organizing ourselves and establishing a routine, prioritizing things, focusing on one thing at a time, taking one bite at a time, learning to say no, and avoiding procrastination. All of these tips are key in order to manage your time effectively. The first thing that I would give you advice on is to begin with some goals. To get anywhere, you must first know where you are going. Otherwise, you're going to end up in the middle of nowhere. Okay. Set SMART goals. SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timed. I'm sure we've already been over that before and heard that before, but it's important to remember in our goals that we make them SMART. We also need to limit ourselves to one goal per major area of our life. We don't want to have 16 goals in school. If we can keep it simple, it's going to increase our odds of us being successful in achieving what we want to get in that area of life. Number the goals in order of importance to you. What is A1? What is that first priority that you're going for? As long as you have your priorities set, that helps make the process a little bit easier. Just once again, if you're unsure where you're going, it's pretty sure that you're never going to get there. Next step with goals is to write down your plan. A goal unwritten is little more than a wish. Okay? Somewhere, someplace in your life, you need to have these things written down that you want to achieve. Whether it's a daily list that you have that helps you kind of check where you're going, whether it's a planner, whether it's some sort of goal sheet that you keep visible for yourself, whatever the case, write down this information in one place and kind of keep that visible to you throughout your days. It's important that you keep your goals and your planning in one space, one consolidated area. That's going to help limit your confusion and whatnot. Beautiful thing about our day and age and technology is that we have a device in our pocket in our cellular phones that basically can do all of this planning and whatnot fairly quickly and fairly seamlessly. Important things to understand is that you need to have a kind of system, and I don't know what your system is. I'm a to-do list type of guy. I can cross things off and I feel good, and that helps me feel better about getting things done. Some people might be schedule type of people, and that might help them feel like they have that structure, but you've got to figure out what it is. Once again, keep the steps in your plan specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time specific. The next one would be to keep organized and establish routine. A lot of time in our day is wasted because of a lack of organization and a lack of routine. We end up, wandering and squandering a lot of our time because we don't have these things. Whatever your system is, I don't know that there's one that's best, but I know that the one that works for you is the one that's best for you. Keep your planner and personal spaces organized so they're easier to access and use. I think we can all identify with it. We've all needed to find something and been looking in an area that maybe was a little less clean or less organized than it should have been, and it's taken us longer than we needed. Habits are important. Habits are a daily schedule. It can be huge in order to help us attain our goals and help us use our time maximally efficient. Do we have a consistent time where we wake up? Do we have a consistent routine for getting ready? To consistent time for leaving to school, coming home, eating, studying, socializing, relaxing, and going to bed? Do we do those things consistently the same and at the same time? What happens in our brain as we do things over and over? We begin to develop habits, and we get more efficient at it. It's an interesting neuroscience principle, but we tend to be better at doing the things that we repetitively do. It just tends to make sense. Also establish a routine of places. Do you have like a specific area in your house where you do your homework, where you work on those type of things? Make sure you stay balanced and keep your time allotment well-rounded. Resist the urge to spend all your time on one thing. You do have to be well-rounded. You don't want to get too sucked into just being focused on one thing. The next thing you would do would be identify your priorities, and I like the acronym WIN. What's important now in identifying priorities. One of the best things that I've seen in helping figure out priorities is Covey's 4-quadrant to-do list. And he basically said that we should put together a 4-quadrant square. And in the top right corner, we'd have things that are both important and due soon. In the top left corner, in the top right corner, we should have things that are important but not due soon. In the bottom left corner, we should have things that are not important and due soon. And then we should have, finally, in the fourth area, things that are not important or not due soon. So anything that obviously falls up here in quadrant 1 becomes an immediate priority, and we get those things done. Any items that are down here, maybe in 4, are things that we can wait on and not worry on. Numbering tasks in this manner helps kind of give you a consistent approach to figuring things out. The next tip that I would give you is the focus. Okay, scientists have shown in studies that we're not very good as a species when we try to multitask. So keep your focus on one thing. Multitasking usually leads to less efficient work, lower quality of work, and as we divide our attention, so too does our productivity divide. Next, we're going to talk about eating. We're going to talk about eating an elephant and then the frog. Okay? So how do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. Now, this applies to time management because some tasks may seem like eating an elephant. Quite impossible, quite large, and really difficult. The way that we do that is break it into smaller sections, one small bite at a time, and we just chip away at those tasks until we get them done. Also, it's important to consider when we have maybe a task that's really ugly that we maybe dread or don't want to do, that's super unpleasant, maybe we do that first. This is referred to as eating the frog first. You take the biggest, the nastiest, the ugliest task on your plate, and you just get rid of it right at first. When you do so, you'll find that you'll feel better about the rest of your day. You won't have the dread of getting to it hanging over you, and you'll be able to go about the rest of your tasks, hopefully carefree, and do them efficiently. The next tip I can give you is learning to say no. Now, obviously, you're not going to tell your mom and dad no on certain things. They hold certain power, and you probably should not necessarily tell all of your teachers no when they ask you to do your homework. So saying no is an art. There's definitely a time or a place. But that having been said, it's important that we understand when to say no. A lot of times we struggle to say no to our friends and our peer groups, but realistically, some of the things that they want us to do aren't at the top of our priority list. Learning to say no without saying the word no can go a really long ways in helping preserve relationships and your reputation as well. You can say no without saying the word no. Things like, for example, I can't make it tonight. What if we do it on Wednesday? Or how would you feel if we did it on Friday instead? Understand that saying no isn't a sign of weakness. Rather, it's an expression of strong discipline and sound knowledge of your own personal limitations. I think that's the biggest misconception about people who say no, is that they're weak and don't know what they're doing. But in reality, it's the exact opposite. Okay. Avoid procrastination. Procrastination is the thief of time. I love the two cartoons up here. The top right corner says, never put off till tomorrow what you can do to, and he's walking out. And the fortune cookie up here saying, stop procrastinating, starting tomorrow. It's humorous. So at any rate, procrastination really is the thief of your time. Get on it, get going. You'd be angry if you got something stolen from you. Well, if you procrastinate, you're getting your time taken from you. You'll never finish a task unless you first start. It's pretty simple and pretty easy. A lot of things don't get done on time because they don't get started on time. So those are things to take in consideration. Tips for school success: plan, set goals, study daily rather than cramming, break it into small bites, kind of eat an elephant. Communicate and make connections with teachers, admins, and peer. Develop a system. Be consistent. Establish a routine with structured place and time. Ask questions. Have a good attitude. Smile and think positively. Ask so what at the end of every class. Draw something from every class. Be balanced. Have study, work, and play equal in your lives. And finally, have fun. Take time to enjoy yourself. Now it's your turn. I want you in your notebook to write down the top 5 tasks you need to complete this week. Use Covey's quadrant to place them in their corresponding quadrants. and then number them in their importance. Make a planner table with columns for your week, whatever's left of it. This is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, but whatever's left. And then